Hey everyone, I'm Kyle Viveris from Your Daily Nerd, and today I wanted to talk about the aftermath of all of this Star Wars Battlefront 2 controversy and just kind of get a sense of where I think everything will go from here. I'll first kind of start off talking about like the controversy itself, the said aftermath of everything that's happened, and then from there I'll kind of talk about my thoughts and opinions on where microtransactions and loot boxes should go from here. So, with that being said, let's talk about the actual controversy itself. Star Wars Battlefront 2 came out about 2 weeks ago to a lot of backlash and hoopla from the gaming community, and to the point where it kind of got picked up by CNN and lots of actual major regular news outlets and not just gaming outlets. The big thing that happened with Battlefront 2 is that it had a microtransaction loot box based system that was basically just awful. It was just really exploitative of what people want in the game series. Somebody from Reddit, of course it's Reddit, somebody sat down and did the math as to how long it would take in game to unlock some of the biggest name characters like Luke Skywalker or Darth Vader, how long it would take for you gameplay wise to unlock those characters in game without actually spending any real money on it. And they sat down using like average number of credits earned per match and how long an average match lasts, and going from there, and came to find out that it would take about 40 hours to unlock one of those two characters. Each character that you can unlock has a different like credit tier on like how much money it would cost, but with Luke and Darth Vader obviously being like probably the biggest name characters in the franchise, they were at the 60,000 credit tier, and using that calculation it would take about 40 hours to unlock one of them, keeping in mind that you don't spend any of your credits on anything else in the game. And that's a problem, because especially with your biggest name characters, you want to play as Darth Vader. That's one of the reasons you buy the game, right? So it's just so exploitative to make somebody pay, basically in a way almost like be like, well, you can spend 40 hours in game to unlock Darth Vader, or you can just slip me a 20 right now and I'll give him free. I don't know the number, like how much it would cost to just buy Darth Vader outright. So I'm pulling that number out of my head, but still, it's that notion of either spend 40 hours in game of your time to unlock Darth Vader, or spend real world money on it to get him. That's not okay. I don't think anybody in their right mind would think that's okay to do. And then so that system kind of got like exposed during about a week before, 10 days before the game launches, people who have EA access or Origins access get access to Battlefront 2. They start making these calculations about, hey, these numbers suck. Like, we don't want to play the game this much to unlock one character in a basically a really grindy fashion. And so people with the deluxe edition of the game get in on it. I think it's on the 14th, so 3 days before the game launches. People are really mad about this because they still haven't done anything. EA finally says, hey, we hear you. We're going to reduce the cost of all the characters by 75%. Which on paper sounds great. That sounds a lot more reasonable. The problem with that is, though, is that they also reduce the amount of credits you're earning during that time. So, it's basically everything balances out. It's still the same amount of grinding, but it's just not as big of a number that you're having to grind towards. So you just end up still in the same situation. And so people are still pissed about it. People are going on EA's official website, going on Origin, going through and demanding refunds for this game. A giant protest kind of breaks out because it seems like, frankly, people are tired of microtransactions in these big AAA games. And, in a $60 game, big $60 AAA game, it's hard to argue with that notion, because you already spent $60 on the game. Why should I have to basically almost be forced into spending another like $15, $20 to unlock one character here, or having to basically grind out that much? So the game came out on the 17th, but a few hours before the game actually came out, EA's like, hey, we hear you. Keep in mind, this is like the second time in the course of less than a week they've been like, hey, we hear you. We hear you. We're going to disable microtransactions. Everybody starts like getting real like happy about all of it. And again, it's great. They took out microtransactions, but in the blog post that they post, they say that this is a temporary measure. They're going to bring back the microtransactions in the game. So it's kind of like a temporary thing. They're going to try to figure out a better way to fix this problem, but at this point, who knows exactly what that fix is. It could seriously just be a case of, like, the progression system is basically all based off of grinding out for loot boxes. And these loot boxes would not be an issue if they were all cosmetic items. All cosmetic items and then maybe character unlocks. Character unlocks, yeah, that fucking sucks, but I guess people could deal with it. If it was just cosmetic items, whatever. It's cosmetic, it doesn't actually affect the value of the game. But the fact that they're in these loot boxes that people are having to grind and get, like the reward system in this game, there are items in there that give you a competitive edge in this multiplayer game. There are like star cards, which is like the loadout system in this game, that give you like plus 10% accuracy or something like that. And to me, that is really where I kind of draw the line when it comes to it. It's like, if this becomes a pay to win type situation, this is something that I don't like seeing. But that aside, let's talk about the aftermath of all that shit going down, because now this is where the interesting part comes in, to me anyway. CNBC did an article 2 days ago talking about talking about the aftermath of this Battlefront 2 controversy. And so 2 days ago, when they reported this, EA's stock has been down 8.5% month to date, which is a huge number. But like, for your stock to go down 8.5% in the course of a month is pretty big, I would think. And they said that this wiped out $3.1 billion of shareholder value. The article also went on to say that the first week UK physical game sales declined 61% from Battlefront 1. 61% is a huge number. Like think about that. That is, for every 10 copies of Battlefront 1 that came out, that people purchased, 4 copies of Battlefront 2 physical copies were purchased in the UK. That's such a drastic margin. And then the other statistic that came from this article that really kind of threw me for a little bit of a loop was the fact that Um, in the year to date on Amazon's top 100 best sellers in the video game section, Battlefront 2 is still not on the Amazon top 100 bestsellers year to date. So of all of the video game stuff being sold on Amazon, one of the biggest distributors of things on the web, a Star Wars video game is not on the top 100, and I think that is probably one of the biggest, like, notification is not the right word, indicator of what is going on with how pissed off people were about this. So that's really kind of what I had written down as far as like the aftermath goes. And so this seems like a victory right now, and in a sense it is, but there are some things to kind of consider going forward for the future. These microtransactions are only out temporarily in Battlefront, so these are coming back. Everybody needs to understand that these microtransactions, this is a temporary measure for them. It's going to come back, and people need to be prepared for when that happens. This is a victory, though, so don't let that be discouraging. It seems like people are really super fed up with microtransactions, and it's hard to disagree with that mentality, because people are already spending $60 for a big AAA game, and kind of have these, in a way, it's mostly frustrating in games that seem like they don't need the microtransactions. Like Battlefront 2, yes, that's a very frustrating situation. But let's talk about Middle-earth: Shadow of War that came out this year. That game is a single-player experience where you basically are being asked to roll the dice on... It's all single-player content. There's no multiplayer. There's a little bit of a multiplayer element to it, but it's a game that doesn't benefit from these microtransactions. There are very... I know this seems like me going on a rant about how awful microtransactions are, and for the most part, I very much dislike microtransactions, but I do think that there is a place for them in modern gaming. I think that Overwatch, which anybody who knows me knows that Overwatch is one of my favorite games of all time, Overwatch does a very good job with their microtransaction system. Yes, the game does cost $40 if you're on PC, $60 if you're on console, but the loot boxes are are already part of your regular progression in the game anyway. When you're first starting off, you level up fairly quickly, and you get loot boxes every time you level up. You get a loot box every time you play in their new event that they got going on. It's like your first 3 wins every week in the arcade mode gets you it's a tiered system in arcade mode, but you get more loot boxes in playing arcade mode. And then the best part about so you're getting loot boxes regularly, but the best part about all of that is that it is completely cosmetic. All the characters that come out are free. They come with the game. They come as part of updates that are out. It's free. Maps are free. The only thing that you're getting in these loot boxes are purely cosmetic items. So I think that Overwatch is a great example of microtransactions and loot box systems done well. Now the problem is that we have right now in 2017, we have a lot of games that have come out this year that have loot boxes and microtransactions that just really don't do it well. They have things that they're extremely intrusive. Like, you keep on getting notifications about the fact that, oh, we have a new loot box in the system, and on the store today we have get this loot box and it will improve your accuracy, things like that. There's no pay to win is not a good system in my mind. It's exploitative, and I feel like it doesn't have any that kind of activity doesn't have any place in today's gaming. So I guess the question then becomes at that point, well, where do we go from here if we want to take if microtransactions were to be eliminated? What's the alternative? Because I don't want it. I think of the regular gamer who's just like, oh, I already paid $60 for this. I don't want any more microtransactions in this game because that's not what gaming should be. And that's a fair argument. I don't disagree with that argument. But then the question does become, where do you go from here to compensate for that? Because the price of development of games has gone up. That's just the fact. That's just the way things work. Price of development for games has gone up, and the people who have to make money on their games still have to be able to make ends meet on, and they have to be able to make a profit on the games that they're making. So sometimes those microtransactions are basically, they decide that's the necessary evil in this case. Like, we need to be able to make our quota, so we put the microtransactions in, so that way we know that we can make ends meet on this. So if we get rid of microtransactions, what are the other options? And I guess this next part I should probably disclaim, like, put a little disclaimer here that I'm a very passionate gamer. I feel like I am fairly knowledgeable about the industry, but I wouldn't say that I wouldn't say that I am like a super duper expert on like what is and like be the best option for things. And these are things that I have been thinking about recently, especially with this Battlefront 2 thing, because going down, and just kind of figuring out what should be the next step for bigger developers. So one of the big draws that Battlefront 2 was toting around when they were announcing the game was the fact that there was going to be no season pass for this game. All the DLC when it came out was going to be completely free, and you wouldn't have to worry about paying for a season pass, which is fantastic. That's great, because in my mind, the DLC, I don't think there were as many microtransactions in the first Battlefront game, but the season pass for the DLC for Battlefront 1 was $50. So the DLC cost almost as much, for the season pass, cost almost as much as the full game on its own, which is bullshit. That's awful. So when Battlefront 2 came out, they were like, okay, so no season pass, no paid for DLC. So in my mind, the reason why they put these heavier microtransactions in this game is a way of kind of like balancing out the fact that they're not doing DLC this year or on this game. And so I guess you could either, if to get rid of the microtransactions, we could start getting really comfortable with season passes of DLC and just sticking at that. And I guess that's an okay system. We are already kind of accustomed to that system, in my mind anyway. But I think really, and this is my personal opinion, and I've been thinking about it a lot, and I've been kind of like, I listen to a lot of different gaming podcasts. I listen to the Giant Bomb cast, I listen to Kind of Funny, listen to Super Best Friends cast. In my mind, I think the possible best course of action could be a increase of price to games. Now, before you click off of this video right now, which if you've stayed around this long, God bless you, but I know games are kind of expensive as it is right now. $60 is pretty expensive, but when you're kind of look at like inflation and prices of games over time, you realize that like the price of games has not gone up in a long time. So you think about back in the Super NES days, games would cost anywhere between like $50 it will usually kind of cost around like $50, but then kind of like a little bit farther down the line, they started costing anywhere between like $70 and $90 for a game, like one game. So, of course, that was cartridge-based gaming, so making a actual cartridge-based game is a lot more expensive than making a disc-based game. I get that. But like I said earlier, costs of games has gone up over time. Cost of production of game has gone up over time, and so things need to be compensated for that. You know, I was trying to look it up and trying to find when exactly the price change from $50 to $60 happened, and I couldn't really find a specific moment or game or in time. I think it might have just been one of those things that it kind of started and then just kind of like trickled out, and then everybody else kind of just started doing it. If you know the specific game when it actually started, when it went from $50 to $60, please like leave a comment and let me know, because I'm actually interested to know. But it's been, I think, since around 2005 that the price, kind of the standard price for games, changed from $50 to $60. So it's been 12 years since the price of gaming kind of went up. And then, you know, obviously this is not including like your special edition versions of games. This is like strictly like standard version of games. So obviously I'm not sure of what exactly the specific pricing point they would need to make games to maybe not even completely eliminate microtransactions, but make things maybe not as invasive with like needing to make money off of the microtransactions. But I think a $70 price point could possibly become the industry standard going forward, and microtransactions would probably not be needed as much, so that way everybody can kind of live happily ever after, I guess, for lack of a better term. But I know that like none of those options are good or not the good option. Like, people don't like microtransactions. Like, it's obvious now at this point, because Battlefront 2 was in the shitter. It's not a great game anyway, but the fact that all these microtransaction stuff happened, the stuff with Battlefront 2 was not good. The microtransactions were crap. People don't want microtransactions invading them and like making just kind of picking at them like, hey, buy me. People don't want that. So it's very clear people don't want microtransactions. People still don't like season passes for DLC for games, which I don't blame them. I don't like season passes either. There are very few games that I buy season passes for these days, unless they're just like games that I really, really love. And I don't think anybody really necessarily wants to see an increase in price of games, because $60 as it is pretty expensive. So another $10 and making the industry standard $70 is not necessarily ideal. But I think in the long run, that third option is the lesser of evils. And so I think that's kind of like where we go from here. So that's my take on all the Battlefront 2 controversy, the aftermath of it, and kind of where we go from here. Let me know what you think. I want to hear what you think might be a better option, because I am not perfect when it comes to this kind of stuff, and I would really love somebody else's opinion on maybe like a even better solution as to what the hell should we do next to make sure that things aren't so shitty anymore. That being said, I'm Kyle Viveris from Your Daily Nerd. What do you nerd out about?